Sal Lagonia is an aviation attorney, and he's also a law professor. Sal, great to see you. We were just talking earlier. What I find kind of crazy in this whole thing is we know that when Flight 8501 requested to go up in altitude, he was turned down because there were 6 other planes in that area. I haven't heard a single word from any of those pilots about how the weather was or anything else. I find that kind of strange, don't you?
And hopefully that's happened already. We would hope that they have already sought out the other pilots that were in the area, asked them for their, what we call PIREPs, or their reports of what was going on in their plane, not too far away from this aircraft.
Yeah, I mean, because you would think they'd say someone would come out, or some news agency would get a hold of one of those planes, figure out the flight numbers, and say, how bad was it up there? And the pilots would say, look, it was scary out there, right?
And we also know from the radar tracks now that they're starting to release that there was an increase in altitude at some point just prior to losing contact.
Yeah, 4,000 feet, from 32,000 feet to 36,000 feet, and then some reason it dropped. I mean, indication it might have been a stall, indication something catastrophic might have happened. But then you talk about the actual wreckage, and the sonar has a pretty good field of wreckage, and there are some reports, and again, these are not confirmed, some reports the plane, at least a large chunk of this plane, is intact, which is very hard to believe.
It really would be hard to believe, given the angle of the descent of the aircraft. Mm-hmm. We lost contact with it early in the zone that they're now looking for the searching, doing the searching at. And only 6 miles downfield, we have the aircraft pieces being deployed. We have the bodies being found. That's a very steep angle of attack. It had to hit hard.
The bodies were intact. The ones they have found so far were intact. So, and again, the autopsy will be performed in the bodies because, you know, that's a key too. Did they die on impact? Was something happen before impact? They die after impact? That's one of the keys in this. The black boxes, Sal, they are really the key to this whole situation.
They are critical. In fact, that's one of the first things they want to do after they've recovered all the bodies. Mm-hmm. One of the first things they want to do is get these black boxes so that they know where to focus on the recovery effort of the aircraft once they find that. The other part that we learned this morning was that the bodies that have been found were clothed. That would tell us that it actually hit the ground with them in the fuselage.
Right.
Typically, if they are ejected at altitude, clothing gets blown off very quickly.
Yeah, it's also, when you talk about the cockpit voice recorder, you know, people don't realize sometimes they think, oh, it just picks up the transmissions from the cockpit to the tower. Well, it picks up the ambient sound as well. So they're going to be listening for things like the engine noise, things like, was there a stall warning? I mean, if this thing really did go up from 32,000 to 36,000 feet and then it dropped very quickly, it's an indication of a stall. The stall warning would go off, and that would give you an idea. So these devices are going to lead the investigation, and hopefully, you know, you put this all together and you're going to get some finality.
There's going to be all kinds of warnings going off in the background. We're going to know that. Every one of them has a distinctive sound. The experts are going to be able to pinpoint which one of those are real and are causing the problem. And even if there was a stall, you know, there's a recovery from a stall as well. So there was more to it than that. We need to know the ground track. We need to know the horizontal velocity of the aircraft.
Yeah, and we kind of skipped over because we talked about the fact the fuselage might be intact or largely intact. There's a possibility that maybe at the end of this crash, right at the very end, that the pilot started to recover and didn't hit as hard as maybe we thought, right?
Certainly a possibility, because you do try to recover from a stall. Those things are recoverable if that's what occurred. But, you know, we have these very severe downdrafts and updrafts in a storm. This airplane could have very well just been tossed like a raindrop out of the bottom of that storm.
Yeah, and people say, well, why is it so urgent? And they forget, we've got 3,000 A320s that are flying around this world every single day, always flying into bad weather. And if it was something with the airplane, and we don't know, again, something airplane, we need to find out, and we need to find out fast.
We need to find out fast. There's another 3,100 on order for other airlines. Those things are going into service. Right now, it doesn't look like the aircraft may have been to blame here, but we don't know that yet.
We don't.
And we have to find that out.
We keep going back to the Air France crash. The Air France crash, there was a pitot tube, which is an airspeed indicator on the outside of the airplane, that was jammed with ice. And so the pilots had no idea how fast they were going. And so that was corrected. That was a big deal, and that was corrected. And, you know, you look for things like that, which are key.
You know, in aviation, there's no such thing as good enough. Everything, it has to be perfect. We can't have one accident every 20 years. And that is what's wonderful about aviation. It is so safe.
Yeah.
but we make sure that we make it safer every time something bad happens. We try to learn from it and try to stop it from happening again.
And it's never just one thing. It's always a series of things in plane crashes.
We call it the chain of the accident, and if you have to break that chain at some point, either through training or through the pilot's ability or through the mechanics of the aircraft.
Sal Lagonia, great to see you.
My
Thanks
pleasure.
for the insight. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.